please? Thank you.
So just to review, because I didn't record the first 5 minutes, we're talking about the history of some of the Jewish texts that we will be learning. And at risk of being lost, the rabbi started to codify these texts. The Mishnah codified by the Tanaim, which is basically recording what was spoken about, what was debated, which is basically everything: the laws, the customs, the rituals, a lot of history. And they started to codify these texts. And this gave birth to the Mishnah. The next, and now we're speaking chronologically, the next group of rabbis, called the Amoraim, started to codify what is now called the Gemara, which was the further discourse debating that what was codified in the Mishnah, which is also debates, but this was the expansion. This was this was a lot of the commentaries, and sort of ended up being psak halacha, and ended up deciding whose opinion we would follow. Of course, in Torah, we always say shivim panim la Torah. There's 70 faces to the Torah. No one's wrong. It's everyone's right. But for our purposes, we're going to follow this way. And so that gave birth to the Gemara. So we're going to start with Pirkei Avot, a very famous set of Mishnahs. I actually believe it's the last codified book on the Mishnah. So now we're probably talking about the year 200 CE. And at first glance, it seems to be a hodgepodge of various Mishnayot, various Mishnahs that, for one reason or another, didn't make it into its own volume and its own tractate. But you sort of get the sense that when they were compiling the tractates of Mishnayot, the ones that didn't make it in the first draft, that were sort of on the back burner, now seem to have a book. And I think probably that they were Mishnahs that were deemed so important that they had to be codified, and they didn't quite know where to put them in. So we now have Pirkei Avot. Come, you want to say good morning to everyone?
Hi.
Yeah.
I just wanted Kahoot. My class is Kahoot.
Okay.
I got everything right but one.
Love you. Awesome. Good job.
Hi, how are you? Bye.
So Pirkei Avot, which has a very Musar feel to it, a very Musar. I'm not sure how to translate the word Musar, but like advice and feel to it, ends up being Pirkei Avot. So I thought that we would start.
I enjoyed about the book.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry if I may. What I enjoyed about reading this book, Ethics of the Fathers, Pirkei Avot, was it tells you how to interact with people. And we'll see that, I think it's in chapter 2 or 3, where it tells you what to do when somebody passes away, what to do when somebody's angry, what to do, what is important in life. And I found that very deep. And the truth is, it really guided my life when I first discovered it in 1980 something, when I was around 40. And it was it changed my whole life. And so every time somebody gives a course on this, I really like to take it, because then I get to see, I hear a different perspective of looking at the same tractate. So I'm looking forward to this.
Beautiful. And that's the beauty of learning, is to always come back to these texts and to find new meanings, So let's begin. We're going to start with the first Mishnah, which I will queue up. Is everyone able to see? Moshe Kibel? So Moshe kibel Torah misinai umsara liYoshua. Moshe received the Torah and gave it over to Yehoshua. Yehoshua gave it to the elders gave it to the prophets, and the prophets Mesarua l'anshei Knesset Hagdola, and the prophets gave it over, transmitted it to the men of the General Assembly. Heim amru shlosha dvarim. They said three things. Hevu mitunim badin. Be cautious with judgment, patient with judgment. Vehamidu talmidim harbe. You should have a lot of students. Ve'asu siag la Torah. And you should make a boundary around the Torah. So a couple of things that I'd like to point out. Kibel, the verb that is used here. Moshe kibel Torah misinai, and not Moshe shama Torah misinai, Moshe ra'a Torah misinai, but Moshe kibel. Moshe received. To me, this tells me that it's up to us almost. Not Hashem gave the Torah at Sinai, but Moshe received the Torah on Sinai. We have to be open to the reception. And umsara liYoshua. And it seems what's the first thing that he did is that he taught someone. Right? It's not Moshe got the Torah from Sinai and threw a party. Moshe got the Torah Sinai and said Shema, or did any of the mitzvot that are in the Torah, although certainly teaching is. But the immediate reaction, as far as the Mishnah is concerned, is that he immediately transmitted it to someone, which I think really speaks to the importance of learning and to the importance of teaching. And of course, we are all teachers and we're all students. And Yehoshua transmitted it to the elders, and the elders to the prophets. So I have a question here, and there's no commentary that I found, but in the pecking order of things, you would think maybe that the prophets would be ahead of the elders, right? Prophets, those that are visionaries and have visions of God and prophesize to the people, really tell the people what's going to happen, what's going to be. You would think that they would be ahead of the elders. This is something that really speaks to me. But no, the elders came first. Perhaps, and I'm really just thinking as I go here, perhaps as the Mishnah is teaching us the importance of teaching, who better to transmit the Torah than the most respected from society, people that have lived a lifetime and are able to teach Torat Chaim, a living Torah, and Skenim to the elders, and the elders to the prophets, and the prophets transmitted it to the Anshei Knesset Hagdola. And Haim Amru, I'm not sure what Haim is, but I would guess it's the Anshei Knesset Hagdola, because that was the last group of people referenced. Hevu mitunim badin, be cautious, be patient in justice. Vehamidu talmidim harbe, have a lot of students. Vasu siag la Torah. Perhaps we can expound on these three concepts. Be cautious in judgment seems to be an odd one for the first thing to say after this Mishnah. It's perhaps not the thing that I would, when I think about the Torah, learning Torah, transmitting Torah, it's perhaps not the first thing that would jump out at me. I'm definitely open to hearing any opinions as to what that means to you and why you think it seems to be one of the most important things to be listed first. Of course, to have a lot of students, maybe I would think that that would come first, right? As right away we see Moshe teaches Yoshua. You would think that the first thing that they would list would be to have a lot of students, but no. Hevu mitunim badin. Any thoughts on that one?
I have the translation here from Beth-El.
Yeah.
And he wrote down, be deliberate in your judgment. Okay, maybe because if you learn all these different rules, okay, these are right, and you come to a conclusion and say, this is it. Okay, as opposed to getting other disciples or students, and I found that the best way to learn is to teach.
For sure.
And what was happening is, and who do you learn from? You learn from everybody. And sometimes some of the students, ask questions that are really profound. And so you really need feedback in order for you to make judgment. That's what I think it was. Then you would say, why wouldn't you? Be deliberate. In other words, be careful and don't make judgment until you speak to other people and get some feedback. This is what I think.
Beautiful. And that's perhaps why the second thing is to have a lot of students, right? To have a lot of people that you learn with, that you teach, that you debate. Also,
before you make judgments.
Right. I certainly believe that every word is very specific in, certainly in the Torah, but also the Mishnah and Gemara. And the word mitunim, badin, I would bet that it was deliberately this word. And if you look at the shoresh, would perhaps be matan, right, which is to give, right? Yes. Like we say matana is a gift, right? So what is judgment? Judgment is rendering an opinion, right? I mean, at the end of the day, a judge gives his or her opinion, and then there's some type of consequence thereafter. But in essence, what is judgment? Judgment is someone saying, this is what it is. So, Elliot, that's a beautiful interpretation, because the Mishnah is telling us, be cautious in your judgment. Don't read it one way. Don't just read it and think you know what's happening. Have a lot of students. Create an environment of learning. And then the third one seems perhaps a little bit odd and out of place, because it seems to contradict having a lot of students, is to make a boundary around the, right? Vasu siag la Torah, make a boundary around the Torah. So why do you think that it would end that way?
Well, I'm sorry. Go, Shirley.
I just want to go back to the first piece about justice, because we say where we justice, that we should be seeking justice. And justice relates to a relationship of how we have with other people and how we have with God. In a just society, people are treated properly. We ensure that the weak amongst us are treated equally, the widow and the orphan, like that. The relationships are of a higher level. So I think that that's really important. And it also speaks to the relationship that we have with God, and that we want God to treat us justly as well, right? And to treat us how we want to be treated in Kol Yisrael, right? So it's a multifold relationship when we talk about justice. The fence around the Torah I always find problematic, because it speaks to those that feel that whatever was, the boundary is such, and the boundaries don't change. And that's what differentiates the different streams of Judaism, of those that feel that yes, there is a fence and there's a line of certain things that we don't change, but there's other things on interpretation can be changed. So that's where I think that there is a distinction between the different streams of Judaism.
Beautiful. To me, Siag la Torah means, because it's sort of what balances out that second thing of having a lot of students. While it's important to teach Torah to as many people as you can, you always have to make the boundary that the Torah is something holy, and it's not just an encyclopedia, it's not just a book. And perhaps having a lot of students, there could be a risk of it being watered down, of its not, of its, accessibility to all, which is, how it should be, but it always needs to be kept in the, Aron Kodesh, right? It always needs to, you always have to have that mindset that the Torah is something holy, and even if we all learn it and we all teach it, there's always going to be that boundary where the Torah is divine, and so I think that that's always something that has to be part of the teaching. Is that we debate and we fight but it's all from Shamayim.
The fence around it, the analogy that I remember somebody telling me was, you're not supposed to play an instrument on Shabbat. Okay, let's say a guitar. So they put a fence around it. Not only are you not allowed to play the guitar, you're not even allowed to take it out of the box. You're not even allowed to touch it. You're not allowed to have anything to do with it. So there's the fence around not playing on Shabbat. That's how I thought the fence.
So how does this translate to here, though?
Well, what you do is you say, you do a law that is brought down, and then you say, well, in order to fulfill that law, you shouldn't do this, as well as not doing the law. You shouldn't play the guitar, never mind not play it, you shouldn't even have it in your mind, you shouldn't even see it, you shouldn't even touch it. Okay, and that's how I think it comes around. It's the fence.
But that seems to contradict, teach it to as many people as you can. Right? Because the Mishna is saying...
Okay, you teach it. Okay, so I have a class and I tell my students, okay, you're not supposed to play on Shabbat. Okay, everybody says you're not supposed. Yeah, but I have a beautiful guitar and it makes me feel so good. Can I not look at it on Shabbat? Can I not have it, not play it? I'm only going to look at it. Okay, and then somebody else says, you know what, I'm going to look at it, but it's not going to break, so I'm not going to have to fix it. Right. So then maybe I could just hum with it or tap it or something. No. Now we're talking about it together. We're not even allowed to see it, never mind not play it. And that's how I would tell my disciples, that's how I would tell my students, okay, what to do and not to do, and why you shouldn't do it, and why it's hidden, okay, because the law says you're not supposed to play on Shabbat. Right. So not only you're not playing it, you're not even supposed to see it, you're not supposed to touch it, and that's why it's there's a fence around, a box around it.
So you think that this Mishnah is introducing the concept of a fence. So it's not literally only pertaining to this Mishnah, but it's in your teachings. You have to also teach this concept of a geder erva. It's called the fence around, which on Shabbat is called muktzah, which to my kids, it means hiding the cookies at the back of the cabinet and closing the door, right? It's yeah, excellent.
So that's, I think, the first thing I would teach my students, okay?
Right. Interesting. Yeah, Shirley?
So is it also their fear that as they once the dispersal took place, that it would be very easy for other views and ideas and
Brilliant.
to get adopted, that would change what the principles that came from Sinai, from God at Sinai. And so there was that fear. And so, okay, so we'll protect it by putting, because that's what offense is. Offense is a protection. It keeps other people out. So is that an idea?
Offense also keeps you in.
True. True.
I love that idea. I think that's probably exactly what they were thinking, was don't let this Torah get, destroyed. I mean, there's time and time again, people wanted to take the Torah, would forbid Jews to learn Torah, wanted to, steal the Torah, make it theirs. I think that's very current. I think it was at risk, and that's why the whole Mishnah is telling you, don't forget where it comes from, right? Moshe got this Torah from Sinai, and then passed it down, and now it's up to you to protect it. That's beautiful.
Isn't it interesting that nepotism doesn't come into effect here? It's not father to son. That was rather interesting.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, Yoshua was from a completely different tribe.
So I think it's supposed to be like for everybody, and everybody is available, and everybody should partake. It should not only be the Kohanim.
Right.
Or the Leviim.
That's great.
Well, this would be the beginning of, I guess, rabbinic Judaism, right? Because it follows that it, as you said, Elliot, it doesn't talk about the Kohanim. It talks about, this is rabbinic Judaism, right?
But who were the original rabbis? They were the Kohanim, and then the Kohan Gadol passed it down to his son. But here, this has nothing to do with nepotism, which I think is fabulous, because it's for everybody to learn, and anybody can be a scholar. Everybody should be a scholar, but anybody can. It's not restricted. So, you know what? The whole idea is the Torah was given to Kol Yisrael, everybody. And everybody is supposed to have many students and supposed to spread it. I think it's really well done.
Yeah.
That's a good, you know what? We verse in a half an hour.
Yeah.
So how many verses? There are 400?
Something like that. So this class was really only supposed to be a half an hour. Usher does a tefillah class at 9:30. So you know what? I think this is a good start. This was really only supposed to be what I'll call a Mishna eye-opener and a way to start the week.
Terrific.
So I'm going to perhaps call it a Mishna, and we will resume.
Thank you,
Monday,
thank you.
Same time, same place.
Real.
Very good.
Resume, is that what you said? Resume.
Exactly.
I love it, Elliot. That's wonderful.
We will resume.
Adam, now I'm going across the hall to learn to daven.
Okay, enjoy.
What was like? Did you see the cartoon that there's two old people sitting in front of their computers, and the guy the old man has a scowl on his face. I have this constant feeling of impending Zoom. Anyhow, see you next week.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Everyone.
Bye. Thank you.